huu, baada ya kulenga na kuangalia mahitaji ya counties, tumepata kwamba kuna haja ya kuajiri walimu wa shule za chekechea ambazo hiyo huenda ikahitaji kama bilioni 12.9 au kwa pengine tuseme pia kuna matibabu ya hospitali ambayo yataathirika sana, kwa sababu kuna ule mpango ulikuwa wa medical equipment scheme ambao ulikuwa umeanzishwa na serikali kuu ambao utaisha mwezi wa 3 na counties zinatakikana kuendeleza. Tunapendekeza na tunaitisha na tunasema kama counties bilioni 450 ndizo zinatosha ili tukaweza kuendeleza kazi za county pasipo na shida nyingi.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Break, and that is the governor of Nyeri County, Mutahi Kahiga, speaking about the resources that counties need. But the chairperson of the Finance Committee at the Council of Governors is here, so let him tell us about... We heard last week that you couldn't agree on how much you require for the next financial year. Well, this is not new. It happens every other time. But why don't you... I mean, why are you always in disagreement? Is it possible to come up to estimates and say that this is what we need for the service delivery, these are the resources that are available? What is the most practical position of resources for allocation?
A small correction, Sam. I'm not the chair of the Finance Committee. That's my brother, Governor Fernandez Barasa.
Ah, sorry.
I am the vice chair
of
the Council of Governors.
You're right.
Why this is an annual ritual is because every year, National Treasury somehow pushes through their position disregarding the position of both the Council and the CRA. And this has resulted in counties being grossly underfunded to do their constitutional functions. And it's, in my view, a bit historical also, in the sense that, you know, the counties came out of a powerful center being dismantled or broken down into units. So in 2013, when we had elections for the first time under the new constitution, functions were being taken out of a central system of governance and bundled and then being allocated to the counties for funding. The constitutional requirement for resources to follow functions there was not honestly adhered to or implemented. And I was in the first council. Even then, we argued that a third of what was due to counties was actually retained at the center. So going into the third term now, you know, in the middle of the third term really of our constitutional implementation of the new constitution, we still are talking about unbundling of functions and counties still not receiving all the resources attendant to their functions. And this is the crux of the matter really. And you know, in the run-up to every election, all presidential candidates and all political parties promise how they will take funding to counties to a minimum of 35%, some even go to 45%. And what was suggested in Bomas the other day is 13% of the national shareable revenue. And this is the crux of the matter. We are not honest and true to the you know, implementation of the constitutional provisions with respect to devolution.
Yet, Daktari, lots of work has gone on. And I remember that, I think at the start of last year, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the summit of January 2023 rather, that it was agreed that functions that were pending would be devolved. What is the process in doing that? Because when last we hosted someone from your institution, they told us that the workings had been ready. Where are we now?
Thank you, Sam. I think on that was the summit resolution on the completion of the transfer, unbundling and transfer of functions to the counties. Why I'm using the word completion is because much had been done. It is continuous process. It is to what level was the transfer done, so that then it enables the statement that resources follow functions. Because for the counties to be able to get more resources, functions need to have been transferred to the counties. So currently, we are in the process of finalizing now the transfer of functions to the counties. Towards the end of last year, before December, around November, we had done a legal notice of the functions that were to be transferred to the counties. Then there emerged a need for further consultations. And the summit resolved then that we need to do further consultations to be able to conclude on that process. And the chair of the summit, the president, through the resolution of the summit, then directed that we were able to conclude this process within 60 days. That is from the date, that was 18th of December, which we are currently processing as the IGRTC, as the secretariat to the summit, because that is our responsibility and our mandate. As we speak, Sam, I can confidently tell you by close of this week, that is end of the week, we will have been able to do revalidation of the functions that we had transferred to the counties, bringing together the county governments and the national government to relook at the delineation that we have been able to do as IGRTC on the transfer of functions. We did the first, before we went back to revalidation, we had a meeting between the county governments and the principal secretaries to be able to look at what we had been able to delineate. We've gone back with the task teams to be able to relook and clean the document. By end of the month, we are hoping then that the summit will convene afresh, the second sitting, for us then to report on the finalization of the transfer of functions. But then does that mean that the resources will be allocated to the counties immediately? No. There's a huge process. That is why the media reported that there was this figure of 272 billion that has been quoted. The process of resourcing the functions that have been transferred to the counties. Once we conclude this process and the summit adopts the report, then since we are done costing based on the functions transferred or identified for transfer, then we need also to work closely with CRA to be able to do proper costing of the functions. Once we have that conversation with CRA and we develop a report, the report will then go to IBEC, where the Deputy President chairs and the governors and the CCs for finance are members of IBEC. If they adopt the report of the costing, then we will proceed to the next level of identifying then the resource envelope, which will inform the budgetary consideration in the next financial year. So if you look at that process, I can assure you it cannot be this financial year. We are very grateful to Council of Governors and the governors and the national government. They have been very cooperative in this process, because if hopefully we conclude this process by, say, August, then in the budget statement to be issued in September, because budget cycle starts way early for next financial year, right, then we can be talking about resourcing the functions that will have been transferred next financial year. If we delay beyond September, then it goes to the other financial year. So the talk for now would be zeroed on the issue of transferring functions, agreeing. And we have chosen to take this approach, Sam. For the longest, the reason why we have not been able to transfer functions is because national government and the county government build consensus on items that need to be transferred. But then there would be a crisis on one or two that are not agreed on. And so it stalls the entire process. We have agreed that we are going to take an approach that where there is consensus, there is agreement on a function that needs to be transferred, we develop a legal notice and we proceed with processing that. Where there is need for consensus building, a few gaps here and there, we build consensus, what we are doing currently on a few aspects of the functions that were transferred. Then we also process the same. so that whatever is disputed, what is causing crisis, we can bang that and continue to build consensus. Right. But of course, we are guided by the Constitution. We are saying there are functions that are exclusive to the counties. Let that be the case. There are functions exclusive to the national government. The beauty of the Constitution is this. If you asked me this question 2013, and Governor here will tell you in the first circle of devolution, if you ask the question on how national government and county government can work together, no one even dared to even say, we cannot work. Everyone said, no, this is our function, we will do it. National government is our function, we will do it. But then the reality is, Article 6 of the Constitution recognizes that counties are distinct, but they are interdependent. That is what now has given life also to Article 189 of the Constitution. What we are saying, look at three aspects, and Governor will agree with me. Currently, health. Health is fully devolved to the counties. Right. The issue of markets is to the counties. But then, because the Constitution also gives the mandate national government for capacity building, and there is this Article 6 and 189, they have come to an agreement because the Constitution also gives that provision that both levels can agree, have an agreement on how they can be able to collaborate to offer services to the citizenry. So for now, what we are saying is, where there is dispute, okay, we can bend that, we can hold that. But where there is need for agreement, then the county government and the national government can agree. So
tell me, yet, even though you're saying that the work is not concluded and there's a lengthy process that you described there, but based on the studies you've done, so what is the costing of those pending functions?
As at now, that's why we're giving the rough figure. We talked about 272 billion. 272
billion shillings.
Yeah, which we have not been able to conclude. And I told you, the figure will be further delved into by the costing by CRA.
And that touches, if you could describe some of those functions?
The functions that we are talking about includes even the health that was not fully unbundled. You know, once you unbundle, you realize some of the functions that were left in the national government. Even the issue of markets. As well, markets was devolved. But what were the aspects of these markets that are still resourced nationally or are not properly resourced are the counties?
Are roads there?
Roads are also there. Roads function because the issue of roads function. County roads in the Constitution has indicated county roads. But then the clarification on what county roads is. Once we reach that level now, which we are working on to clarify those functions, then the addendum resources will then proceed to go with it. So
ideally, if you touch on the roads and you identify that this is taking about, say, 30 billion shillings, so every county is supposed to get its share of the roads, or there is supposed to be an agency that, like what happens with Kura and Kera, that continues to do that work? How is that supposed to work?
You see, once there is a demarcation that this function belongs to the counties, for our job as IGRTC is to delineate and bundle and transfer to both levels of government.
Yeah.
How it is going to be implemented at the counties or at the national government is not our bit.
If I may clarify something, the 450 that we're asking for is not really, does not go to the full extent of the functions that we are waiting to be unbundled and transferred. Because if we were to go that way, then we should be asking for well above 700 billion. Because they have themselves, as the intergovernmental agency, suggested an increase of 272 billion relating to functions that ought to have been unbundled and transferred. So the 450 is just what we thought was a reasonable increase in light of the forecast growth in revenue according to the guidelines of sharing revenue. So we're not at this point even discussing their report. Although you know their report was gazetted, and that gazettement was cancelled and the decision rescinded, and then now national government asked for a further 60 days. I mean, so we're just asking for what we think is a fair increase as a result of the focused growth in the formula of sharing revenues. And that actually would be like 16% of the shareable revenue. And what CRA is suggesting which, I mean, it's quite a disappointment for the first time, really, that CRA numbers are so close to what National Treasury is suggesting, is 13.5%. And National Treasury is suggesting 13.2%. And we're saying you can't really give us 13% of the shareable revenue and expect us to perform our functions.
And that would be unconstitutional.
I think they're trying to go around that by, taking a percentage of the last audited and what do you call, approved account, which, by the way, are for the fiscal year 1920. And now
2020, you mean?
I mean 2019. Sorry, yeah, 2019, 2020. That's what I mean. 1920. That's what I mean.
Okay.
2019, 2020. So, I mean, you can't really base it on accounts of 2019, 2020 when we're in 2023, 2024, and the law, I think, assumed that it will be applied in a just and progressive manner, that there will be no undue administrative delays in the conduct of audits and approval of the same, because 1920 is too historical.
Right.
So I think these are the challenges. As for roads, just to clarify to you, Kenha, Kura, and Kera were all agencies that existed prior to the Constitution.
Right.
To the new Constitution. The new Constitution only recognizes national trunk roads and county roads. So the roads money should be split in a fair manner between national trunk roads and county roads. What is due to national trunk roads can then be managed by national government in whichever way they want. If they want to create 10 agencies to deal with national trunk roads, that's well within their right. But what we're saying is we're not being allocated any money out of the road maintenance levy fund to maintain county roads. That is not what our Constitution envisaged.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll get back to you. Diana, what are your thoughts? Because, like he says, this is Article 203(2) reads that for every financial year, the equitable share of the revenue raised nationally that is allocated to county governments shall be not less than 15% of all revenue collected by the national government. What should be the correct interpretation? Is it revenues, allocated in 2022, 2023, or 2023, 2024 should be at least 15% of the revenues collected that year or the last audited? What is the correct interpretation?
Thank you, Sam. And like Governor says, this has been a historical problem of the center holding too tight to power. And I also think it's a problem with the constitutional infrastructure, because Senate, when it comes to the budget and revenue-raising measures, is not given the same power as the National Assembly. And unfortunately, we've always treated the powers as a contestation, as opposed to a reality that we ought to facilitate to make governance work. Because it shouldn't be a tug of war between, say, Senate, National Assembly, Council of Governors, and the executive. At any given point in my constituency, in my ward, I am served by both levels of government. So we ought to facilitate them in the best way possible. For that, I must say the process of unbundling the transfer of function is a commendable one. That way, we have something we can rely on to even push for an increment. But when it comes to division of revenue, the court has ruled, after an impasse that was there, I think, 2018, that we must use the most recent, and they must not be older than 24 months. The last year, Treasury presented a budget. We immediately wrote to them, reminding them, please do not be in contempt. The court has already, we cannot be in 2019. That is how we keep shortchanging the county governments. And in so doing, we shortchange ourselves. Because the functions of the county will never be implemented effectively by the national government. So I think we must embrace the reality of a devolved system of government. It would be very unfortunate to reduce the revenue that is going to counties. They are already struggling with the fact that because of the debt crisis, a debt where we do not see equal representation at that point. Because when it comes to matters debt, there's a Senate adopted a report, National Assembly overturned that particular decision. Because of the debt crisis, counties have significant pending bills. There are significant delays. Then you reduce the amount of revenue that you're giving to counties. If we do that, we must change completely. One level of government cannot be ambitious, and the other one is told, drop your ambition. If we raise the national budget and the national revenue, it is not national revenue. Okay, I don't know the term.
Shareable revenue.
It's shareable public revenue. Let's use public, because national tends to have the import that it is for national government. That's why even using national treasury, is there a county treasury? You just want to say national treasury, public debt. No, public treasury, I don't know the terminology there. But if we increase the budget, we must therefore allow both levels of government to grow at the same level. If we have come to an analysis and accepted that based on where we are, the fiscal consolidation process, we must reduce our expenditure. That must happen for both levels of government. And at that point, it will be easier to say, this is the revenue, this is the budget we are working with. At least, we should not be struggling with complying with the 15%. That should not be a struggle right now. We should be working towards increasing and ensuring we resource the functions that have been unbundled correctly.
You know, I'm looking at 2019-2020. A child born June 2019 or July 2019 would be turning 5 years. And that's the same resources that they were being allocated to buy diapers is what we're using to allocate resources for them to go to school. Tetas Lotte, tell me, when you assess all these conversations that there is need to transfer functions to take resources to where the functions are, what would be your comment about the capacity that has been built over the last close to 11 years now of devolution in absorbing such kind of resources, so that when this conversation is concluded and the functions have moved and the resources have moved, we'll see continuation of service or even improvement of service delivery?
Thank you, Sam. I think having been a deputy governor during the first devolution, that is 2013-2017, and having a governor sit here and also the ITRG, IGTC, I think we are able to dissect the issues to deal with counties very well. One thing that I will say, and I will want to turn the debate a little bit towards the performance of counties. I think when we came in, there is what we call the Schedule 4 of the Constitution that delineates very clearly what is supposed to be done by the county government and what is supposed to be done by the national government. I did not envision a point where 11 years after we are still talking about functions that are supposed to be transferred. It basically means that we do not have the spirit, what I said earlier, the spirit on the letter. The Constitution is the letter. The spirit of our Constitution is not what we are implementing. The reason why we're here now, 11 years after, trying to say we still have functions that we're supposed to transfer to the counties. Having said that, I want us to look at what the Control of Budget said last December. If you look at what the Control of Budget said last December, in the month of September to December last year, we found that there are counties that never spent any shilling on development. And that is very sad, and it's a sad reality in this country. We've actually seen levels where counties are moving more towards recurrent costs and recurrent expenditure compared to the development budget. I know when that report came out, there was a lot of uproar from the Council of Governors saying the report was not true. But again, there was a debate within the public and the citizens. And that gave the national government some bit of breathing space to say, we are not able to unbundle some of these functions because counties are not well prepared to be able to perform development functions. And I'm a proponent of devolution. And I think the president is a proponent of devolution. I've also seen the former prime minister being a proponent of devolution. We want to see counties performing. But counties then need to show. Counties need to become the proponents of themselves, to tell the public and to show to the public and to the world that they are able to perform what is supposed to be theirs. The aspect where we see zero development, out of 180 billion shillings, you find only 6.7 billion going for development, is a sad reality that counties might not be very prepared enough to be able to handle functions. And that basically then allows Kenyans not to have the push to say, let counties.
What do you do with the information that sometimes disbursement of funds are delayed? Can you spend what you do?
I know that's the problem. And that was one thing I wanted to come to. And I think we all agree that the national government have not been performing as per the Constitution, because it is very clear that the national government is supposed to disburse funds timely to the county government. But if they do not, then the county government delay in doing their development work. But there are counties that have received all their allocations, because at the end of the year, after a whole summation have been done, all the monies have actually gone to the counties. But if you look at the development vis-a-vis the recurrent, you find that there are counties that are performing dismally. And the reason why counties need to show Kenyans that they're able to handle this well before we get a good push to say, let counties take all the functions. It is a sad reality that 11 years after, we are still saying that counties need to be given all their responsibilities. I think it is the national government, they need to let go, because we wrote this Constitution and we want the counties to perform their functions as per the Constitution. But then the counties, that is what I'm trying, the counties need to show that they're willing and they are able to perform. Otherwise, then why would we then disburse all the funds to counties, and then you find that 90% of that is actually going to recurrent, to paying staff. We actually saw governor now saying that they now need to employ more teachers, ECD teachers, which is good. But then is that the all functions that the counties will be doing? Counties require, we need to see hospitals, we need to see roads, we need to see water, we need to see all the functions in Article 4, in Schedule 4, being performed by the county government, not just paying salaries.
Something I need to
respond to that. I want to
correct. Sometimes I think our media also is quite sensational in reporting certain things, and it reminds me, one of my teachers used to tell me, the only truth there is in the newspapers is the sports section. So that's which reports the results of the previous day. Now, referring, for instance, to this control of budget report, first of all, what came out in December from the COB was the report for July, August, and September. It was for Q1 of the fiscal year 2023-24. Yeah, it was for July, August, and September. And to be a bit fair to the controller, I think people cherry pick what it is they want to report. Because, yes, the controller said this county spent zero money on development in this quarter, but it's also, the report also gave the reasons as to why. And part of the problem that we have, for a layman, and when it's sensationally reported, then it's very easy to call out the counties. We are under, in governmental reporting, what is called cash basis accounting. Cash basis accounting, in accounting language, means you report and recognize your revenues when you receive them and your expenditures when you pay them, right? Not necessarily when you incur, because you could be incurring expenditure, right? But you have no money to pay. And I'll give you two examples, because we've really been called names over this Q1 report, which is so unfair. My first allocation that was actually disbursed and transferred and actually received in our accounts for the case of Wajir County in Q1 was end of September. End of September.
First payment for
yes,
July,
first
August,
physical money
September
that came into an account from which we can operate. There are two accounts from which we can operate.
Yeah.
One is called development account. The other one is called operating account or recurrent account. Then there's the other one called CRF, which is more of a consolidated account where the monies come in, and then you have to have the permission of the controller to move it from there to an account you can use. So we received the first monies end of September. By that time, and you know, my allocation for a month is about, in the region of, depending on whether there's conditional grant or not, between 750 and 800 million. So I'm receiving 800 million relating to July in September, end September. By that time, KCB had actually paid salaries for me for the month of July, month of August, and month of September. And they're knocking on my door because they also have prudential guidelines that govern them. They have to report why this money is out for 3 months. So what do? I take that money and give it all to
the bank.
To the bank, because they paid salaries of my healthcare workers and everybody was coming to work. So I was not able to spend a shilling of that quarter's money on development because I only got July money, which came end of September.
What's the size of your payroll?
In the region of about 350 million. So by that time,
for 3 months, that's
like $1 billion plus.
Right.
Yes.
And you received 800.
Yes, for that month. Now, let's take this quarter that has just ended. The second quarter is from October to December. So that's the month of October, November, and December. We are accessing our money for November now as Wajir County. We have not yet accessed our money for November. It has been released, yes, but we're going through the process of the control of budget for the sign-offs.
When was the November money released?
That's like 2 weeks back. So I'm yet to receive my December money, right?
So even
and this is relating to the quarter, October, November, December. We're now in February.
Yeah.
Yes. So how could I have utilized that money relating to October, November, and December to pay development for that period when it has come well after the end of the quarter, well into the next quarter?
So are development works going on or not?
We are incurring because we have contracted. Contractors are on site. We are building a level 4 hospital. We are building many things. We are drilling boreholes. We're doing all manner of development because we have a development budget, right? At the end, I mean, when you do your budget, you know this is X is what you're going to spend on recurrent, and X is what you're going to spend on development. The rest is a timing issue, depending on the actual release of money.
Based on now the contracts you have with these contractors,
yes,
how does it affect the cost of that project? Because if you have to pay in arrears for a very long time, there's the cost of money. How is that working? Yeah,
it's unfair to the contractors. Yes, if it's a big project, then we do it through what's called certificates of completion. So they might be able to condone a few delays here and there. But a lot of our projects also at the grassroots are pretty small projects. So contractors would go in, do them quickly, and then have to wait for their money. So it's part of what's also...
Like how long is that wait on average?
As you can see, I mean, if I'm accessing November money now, you can, and then it takes another, give or take, sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks to actually get the last cent out of the Control of Budgets Office. So there is a month-to-month, between 3 to 4 months delay. And then towards the end, when National Treasury is trying to play catch-up, because they realize that they've delayed this money, then they start paying a bit faster, and you get to a situation where you have received 2 or 3 months allocations in 1 month, but the next day again the system closes because the fiscal year has ended, and you have to revote that money in the next year again. and you have to wait for your assembly to reconstitute, I mean, to get back to business.
Yeah.
And the earliest you are able to spend it again is in September. So these are some of the challenges that the public are not being told of.
Right.
It's easy, and I mean, I didn't expect that out of a former deputy governor, you know, with all respect to the, because he understands these things, right? He was there. If there is a delay of 3 months in disbursement and another, give or take, 2 to 4 weeks in actual release, then do I spend money in a quarter for which I haven't received the money?
Okay.
Why can't we read the entire control of budgets report?
No, I have it here open.
Yeah.
But Daktari, talk to me, because even as you unbundle and devolve the function that should actually be being taken care of by the counties, but you don't deal with the question of release of resources, whether it's by the National Treasury or it's for them to be in a position to use, then, I mean, it amounts to nothing in the end. How do you ensure that there is efficiency? Because the schedule that guides how money is released and passed by the Senate says that by the 15th of every month, money should be sent to the counties.
I think first, Sam, let me declare that I am from the counties. And having served as an MCA for 2 terms, I appreciate what the governor is talking about. That said, if we were to unlock from our end, as IGRTC, the impasse that there is now, and what former Deputy Governor West Pokot, because now we're talking about the counties, and we recognize that there's a former MCA here, there's a former Deputy Governor, and there's a sitting governor.
Yes.
And a citizen here.
Yes.
Then means, what are the mandates in IGRTC that can be able to address this? One of the mandates of IGRTC as a secretariat to the summit is to be able to develop reports on implementation of the transferred functions to the counties. Where then, once we transfer, what we are saying, we transfer and resources will follow. We should be able to be monitoring the implementation of the said functions. That then addresses also the issue of the funds release and utilization of the funds. Not in the context of COB or in the context of Auditor General, no. It is on the context of intergovernmental relations to ensure that functions are implemented as transferred, so to speak. So for us, I look at the near future where we will be, once we do the transfer of these functions, because we are now in phase 3 of the transfer and bundling and transfer functions, because it was first done, of course, through the Transition Authority. We are currently performing residual functions of the defunct Transition Authority. And there was the first IGRTC committee that served for the first 6 years. Now we are in the second phase. When we are going to do our report, which will be adopted by the summit, where the governors are members and the president, to reflect on how the functions then are being implemented, to inform decisions on how then better can these services to citizens, now Diana here, can be enhanced or should be facilitated. From that, such reports is when now such decisions as to what to do then on the issue of transfer of resources, timely transfer of resources, and also whether, you see, there is so I would want also to address later the issue that has been mentioned by Governor Kahiga, Governor Mudomi, would be then the National Assembly as well. Because once those reports are adopted by the summit, we submit them to the legislative bodies, that is the National Assembly, Senate and County Assemblies, for them to appreciate that this is the functions that were transferred to the counties. How better have they been done? How better can we be able to improve? And it will be an independent report because it will be appreciated by the governors at the summit. So that every level then of government agrees to, do you know, even we are calling out the national government. What governors talked about? Capacity building.
Right.
What is capacity building? The question would be, what's capacity building? In the previous understanding, 1317, when I was an MCA, I thought this national government is supposed to come and do workshops, training. Is it only that? No. There is more to capacity building. And now that we appreciate, all of us now, as we mature or in implementation of our constitution, then that would be able to even inform such reports then, which are independent, not financial as to COB and AOAG, would then advise also the National Assembly, Senate, and county assemblies on even how they would also want to process the issue of legislative objects that need to be done, a development agenda that needs to be driven, because we are monitoring how they are being implemented. So I'm sure that once we reach that level from our end, we will be helping to ensure that service delivery to Diana is enhanced.
Yet, Honorable Lotte, politics appears to be affecting some of the counties. I have not had a lot of noise in his county, but there are certain counties that there's a lot of standoff between MCAs and the governor. Case in point, Meru County. So even as we proceed with this, there has been a bit of growing suspicion among the public that they're just fighting over resources. How do you clean up that process so that you have, for instance, of the national government and parliament, well, they're not perfect, but there is a way, you would see there's a bit of mutual respect. So how do you translate that into the counties so that services are not affected because of some just local political disagreements?
True. I'll answer that question, but I also want to come back briefly, slightly, to what the governor said. Having sat as a deputy governor, I'm not blind to the fact that we need to have functions transferred, but I'm also not blind to the fact that the report that was shared by the Controller of Budget talked about 10 counties could not spend. Basically means if there was a delay for 47 counties, why was it that there are some counties that registered some bit of development expenditure? That basically tells you that the 10 counties or so probably are not well planned, and basically telling you that counties have structures that could or could not aid planning to enable development to be achieved. So that is what I'm saying. I'm not trying to water down devolution. I'm actually saying county governments need to show to the public that they can manage development activities within their counties. We are all pushing for counties to receive funding. We are all pushing to ensure that Assembly 4 of the Constitution is achieved. We are all pushing to see that this country's development is spurred through the counties. And that is why the spirit of the Constitution lies, and the reason why we wrote this Constitution. Then come to the question that you've just alluded. And again, that is also very attached to that. We've actually seen that over a period of time, the national government has increased its revenue collection. But unfortunately, the county government has dropped its revenue collection. I've seen them saying that they plan to raise 78 billion. But if you look at the structures from 2013, when the national government is trying to improve revenue collection, the county government revenue collection is coming down. And this was very clear when there was another report that came immediately. The new government took over, the 2022 government. They said that the counties that were collecting even more revenues, immediately there was another government that came in, the revenues dropped. Does it mean that the revenue collection base dropped? No. It was the systems that failed. And so I'm actually asking, and I continually ask, for purposes of this country, that let counties efficiently manage resources. Let country efficiently know that they are in this particular aspect to develop this country. The local politics that we see, we've seen this in many counties, and you've mentioned one county, that we've seen politics take the central role.
You've seen this one in what?
I've just said that we've seen this in many counties. Okay. Not only one county that you've mentioned. You've mentioned one county, but there are many other counties where we've actually seen feud between the county assembly and the county executive. We've seen even within the county executive, the governor and the deputy governor fighting so seriously that there is no development that is taking place. And so if we want to address this, we will want to look at the structures that are forming the counties. And I think the best point where we can look at this is to look at the laws that are governing management of counties. One, when I was sitting in as the deputy governor, and I think I say that, I think 11 years ago, and I heard it from somebody, the role of the deputy governor has not been defined. It's not been defined. So the deputy governor, when he takes the Bible or the Quran to swear, he says, I will advise the governor when asked to do so. That is the only role of a deputy governor, when asked to do so. And when they start differing, there is no role of the deputy governor. And so the deputy governor with this small muscle start fighting the governor. And so we've got that kind of war that then affects service delivery. The same thing to the county assembly, where the speaker of the county assembly, if he doesn't agree with the governor, or then is held hostage by the county assembly members, they start holding governor hostage, that if you don't do this for us, we will not pass this bill for you. And unless that is defined, that the governor is given more powers, even to go beyond that, most of the county assemblies have held governors hostage. And I think the governor here can tell her. He might not say it, he might say it, but most of the things that are actually signed by the county assembly sometimes requires the governor to talk to them in confidence, in private, out of the constitutional talking.
And what does that entail?
It entails you taking them to Dubai. It entails you taking to South Africa. It entails you giving them one or two things before they actually then approve a document that is yours. And this is the reality. The governor might say, the governor might be afraid to say now because he's the governor, because if he goes out of here.
Their own resources that they can use for that.
Sam, if I was in my previous position, I would dispute that content. But for now,
you would.
I would. I hold myself.
The reason why I say this is there was a governor in Nakuru, the first governor of Nakuru.
Yeah.
He actually admitted. He finally came to State House, and I think he's retired now. He admitted and he said the MCAs were holding him hostage, and he had to take them somewhere. And then they became friends because they actually wanted to impeach him until when he actually sat with them somewhere, and then they agreed. And this is an open discussion, he said.
So the question I'm asking, because you're the one making the allegation, not the former governor of Nakuru, so they have resources for themselves, or where do they...
No, there are no resources for themselves. You know, for even every budget to be approved, it has to go to the assembly. The assembly has to approve. It's just like that. The governor, the executive make the budget, and then it goes to the assembly for the assembly to approve, to debate it before they agree, and then it's signed. So if the governor is not taking the care of their interest, that proposal.
So are you insinuating that
there's
some money that is given to MCAs to pass certain laws that the governor may want?
I'm not insinuating. I'm actually saying things that are beyond, because we are trying to solve the issues in this country.
These are county resources.
Yes.
Under what vote do they fall?
That is a question that we can discuss the way governors discuss with the MCAs out of this discussion.
And away from that.
No, you tell me. You're making
yes.
What votes
I gave you an example of a governor that said, if it wasn't because of my discussion with the MCAs, and you can agree, when you look at the Meru issue, for example, after the governor was brought in for the first time in impeachment, he was asked, go and talk to your MCAs. What was that talk about? You heard it. It was like, let the governor.
But because you know, so what vote does that money fall under?
I do not know where the vote comes from, but you have to placate the MCAs in a manner that they agree with you.
Well, you've raised a lot of issues, and I want to hear from Diana, but I also want to hear a quick response. He has raised the question of Onsource Revenue, but also that conflict between MCAs and governors and how it's resolved.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with yours?
I think the Honourable Member raised a number of issues. On the issue of the Controller of Budget report, yes, it said there are 10 counties that spend 0, but there are also another 10 or so that spend 1%. So it can be that 20 out or half of governors in Kenya didn't have money to spend, are not wise enough to put money in development. And as I said, a lot of factors might affect that. Your own level of on-source. Some counties actually generate much more on-source revenue. So that's streaming in even as they wait for national government monies, national allocation, equitable allocation.
But what happens, because like your county, based on the report, you collected 9%, which was 15.3 million shillings in Q1, against a target of 170 million for the entire year. What's going on? Because one would have expected that Q1 you're able to collect up to 25%.
And I think it will balance out year on year, because some of the things we collect is annual business permits, and they get collected throughout the year. So in one quarter you might collect much more than the other. But year on year, I think at the end of this year we'll have much higher revenue than the previous year.
Will you get close to the target of 170 million?
I'm not sure about that, because sometimes the targets are also a bit too ambitious. If you set it a bit low, you also don't motivate them to work very hard. But also, let's not be crowded by the issue of on-source revenue. Yes, we should all endeavor to raise our on-source revenue. But the revenue-raising capacity of counties, unless you have a resource that is bringing in a lot of money, like for instance, some of the counties do, like game reserves, which are managed by counties, is limited to just a few things. It's limited to land rates, entertainment taxes, depending on the number of entertainment joints that you have, and then user levies for services that you provide, maybe in your hospitals, the copay or the cost sharing. So it's not really, you don't collect a lot of direct or indirect taxation. And that's why the whole concept of, collecting and collating these taxes into a pot at the national level, and then using a formula that's fair to share it out between vertically between the counties and the national government, and then horizontally between the counties was envisaged in our constitution, is actually in our constitution. So on-source revenue does not affect sharing of revenue. It's not a factor in the formula. On-source revenue does not affect the schedule of releases, right? So as we're talking about releases of money to counties in a timely manner, and as we talk about counties getting their fair share of equitable share in the vertical allocation, we should not cloud it, crowd it out with this discussion of on-source. But I agree with you that we should all endeavor, and I believe all governors are endeavoring to get it right and to increase it. But I think the problem is bigger, because you've also brought in the question of politics. Governors do not have a lot of political protection because they do not control parties. They're not able to whip MCAs in many cases through the party structures. And in some cases, actually, governors get elected through independent tickets on their own, campaigning and by their name, like the case was with Kawira Mwangaza, governor of Meru. Now, Sam, let me ask you, what was so wrong in the eyes of the MCAs of Meru that Kawira had to be impeached before she formed her government? Right? She didn't have CECs. She didn't have chief officers. She had not even started spending county money. So we are susceptible to the national political fights. You just need one rough politician at the national level, or a politician who contested against you as governor, who is powerful in the system, to cause enough trouble for you and brew enough trouble for you. So I think it all then goes back to the question of contestation. These positions are transient. We are there for some time. We should reduce the fights at all levels. We all know what we asked to be elected for. If I asked to be elected for governor, I knew what the role of governor is.
Right.
If my brother was going to be deputy governor in the first term, he knew what the deputy governor's role is. And deputy governor's role is not any different from that of the deputy president. We've also seen fights at the national level between president and deputy president. The last 5 years, we are all in Kenya, right? Where the deputy president at some point was being, the then deputy president, who is now president, you would come to Kenya and you think he was the leader of the opposition. So sometimes this, the law does not manage relationships, yes, but people don't have to like each other.
Yeah.
We just have to be decent enough to respect each other and to tone down the noises when there are disagreements, and also give people space. This is why elections happen every 5 years. If you think the people of Wajir made a mistake in making me governor, wait for the 5 years and elect a better governor.
How do you deal with your MCAs? Because he says there's a special vote in some counties.
That is not true. And it's not true. In my case, it's not. I reason with them. The other challenge that's going to raise, which is tied to this, is the question of blurring the roles. I think we've made every elective position into an executive role in this country. And it's a challenge going forward. Why do I say this? Because we've created funds for every elective position to use. There is CDF, for instance, right? Which today, practically, you can't take away from MPs. Even after the court said it's unconstitutional. So the reality is Kenyans expect the MPs to spend in CDF. Now the senators are also clamoring for some funds. And surely, if you can give it to every elected role, why not the senator? The women rep have
GAF.
And GAF. Yes. MCS want Ward Development Fund. And in many cases, what governors have done is they may not have called it Ward Development Fund, but they have allocated a certain amount of money to be spent by the executive in those particular wards. If it's going to bring a level of equity and ensure that every ward has something, out of the kitty, because our funding is also, resource base is so thin and continues to be thin as a result of underfunding. Right. You may find a situation where you spend nothing in a particular ward, especially if you have many wards. So they will negotiate. They will negotiate about those things.
It's it, right, Governor?
But this other one of saying that MCAs whatever have kitties. Yeah. We also hear the same allegations about National Assembly sometimes in the media. Is it all true? So don't believe everything you hear.
Okay. Now, Diana, 30 seconds, and I'm sorry because we've taken so much time on that. Your closing remark on this conversation of counties.
I think on the issue of counties, and especially as we now move and await the Gazette notice that will take us to full devolution, what we require is a display of commitment, because then we become suspicious when there is a reduction in the revenue that is to be allocated to counties, yet we are saying now we have embraced full devolution. It has also been concerning the things we've been hearing about health, devolved functions when primary health function of mosquito nets are taken up by the national government. I don't know whether it's capacity building or something like that. Issues like the housing levy and the bill that is being debated, it must then factor in that this is a devolved function. If we do not display that, then we will continue to be concerned. And on NADCO, allow me to state, because in the housing levy, there was a time I was concerned that the clerk of the National Assembly was in contempt. I engaged him on the issues of the housing levy and the injunction by the court. I am aware that he engaged robustly in the court process, and the public participation was presented before the Kisumu court. So I am optimistic that even for NADCO, the decision that has been reached will be implemented within the frameworks of the law. The clerk is the administrator. Okay. He was not swallowed by the political noise. Thank you.
Okay. Is that your apology? I have to thank you for making time for us to have this conversation. We've gone past our time. Apologies to Safin. And of course, there has been, well, I'm told it's been soon, not Safin. The more reason why I apologize. But thank you so much, Dr. Honorable Lote, one governor of Wajir, as well as Diana Gishengo for making time.
No closing remarks.
Closing remarks. It's past our time. My name is Sam Getuku. See you again some other time. Bye for now.